What is going on with Fallout right now? Following the release of the Fallout TV show, things genuinely changed for this IP. We saw a massive boost to player counts across the board, but far more importantly, these player records and the overwhelming success of the Fallout TV show are turning some heads at both Microsoft and Bethesda. In the months following the release of the Fallout TV show and all of these games basically exploding and setting new records on their player counts, I heard from multiple parties about how the performance of the TV show and subsequent boosts to the games exceeded expectations. Todd Howard even alluded to this in a recent interview, but it genuinely seems like both Microsoft and Bethesda weren't expecting things to get this crazy when it came to Fallout, and that's actually a pretty big deal. This explains why there wasn't a new Fallout game or really all that much to launch alongside the TV show. They didn't expect this degree of interest or monetizability, but now they do recognize it. They recognize that many of these games just got a bunch of new players, and those players aren't going anywhere anytime soon, as it genuinely seems like both Microsoft and Bethesda are going to be putting more money behind Fallout going forward. A little over a month ago now, I was flown out to London by Bethesda to check out the recent Fallout 76 DLC a bit early. So I've been making Fallout videos for a while now, and this was honestly a big deal. It's the first Fallout event I've attended since the 2018 launch of Fallout 76. And the impression I got was more Fallout events, or perhaps even yearly Fallout events, just like what happens with ESO, could follow. I would not be surprised if Bethesda starts returning to PAX East to promote the new Fallout 76 DLCs every year, as it really does feel like the budget for events like that are now back on the table after the boost from the Fallout TV show. And this really is a big deal. This is Microsoft and Bethesda putting more money into Fallout where they previously weren't. Something changed that made these events make sense to them financially now. As well as right as the Fallout TV show and Fallout games started to break records, we also heard from Jez Corden how Xbox wants the next Fallout game out even sooner. Now that Xbox is acutely aware that this game is pretty much guaranteed to be a hit, they're really pushing to get this out as soon as possible. And part of that hypothetical is a developer that isn't named Bethesda Game Studios working on this new Fallout game. So, over the last few months, we've seen a shift internally at both Bethesda and Xbox. The value of Fallout is increasing, to the point where now Fallout may very well be one of the most valuable IPs at Microsoft overall, only potentially behind titles like Call of Duty or Minecraft. And this means they're starting to put more money into Fallout as a result, which becomes incredibly interesting as we are now seeing developers like Larian, Obsidian, and even some others mention that they are interested in working on a Fallout game. And it's not like this is just a pipe dream anymore. Many of these developers' schedules are finally starting to open up. But summer is finally here, so I'm gonna help you spend some more time outside. Yeah, no, just kidding. I know my audience, and I know we would all love nothing more than to spend this entire summer playing video games. And with today's video sponsor, HelloFresh, you can spend less time cooking and way more time gaming. The real magic of HelloFresh is it made me start to actually enjoy cooking. You'll get this big box of ingredients and recipes delivered straight to your front door. Each of these are conveniently pre-portioned, so you have just the amount you'll need, and it'll include incredibly easy to follow instructions. And with some of these meals, it'll take just 15 minutes to cook, even from a chef that has no idea what they're doing. And this doesn't get boring, as HelloFresh has 45 meal options you can pick from each week, including a variety of 20-minute recipe options if you're truly trying to save time. But HelloFresh helps you save money too. No more grocery shopping and spending way too much on ingredients I only use part of. And having quick and easy meals in the fridge means less eating out and just feeling better because you'll be eating less crap. And since you watched this video, I'll even help you get a bit of a deal. Click the link in the description and use my code and get 10 free meals plus free appetizers for life. One appetizer item per box while subscription is active if you're in the US. Outside the US, local discounts will apply. So yeah, honestly, this Larian wanting to work on Fallout thing completely came out of left field for me. In a recent interview, the CEO of Larian described interest in working on a Fallout game. I think a lot of people are seeing these headlines and just stopping there, oh cool, Larian wants to work on Fallout. But in context, things are definitely quite a bit different. As in a recent interview for Games Radar, and specifically for their Edge magazine, the CEO of Larian talks about the games he was interested in working on prior to Baldur's Gate 3. It would have been Ultima, it would have been Fallout, it would have been Baldur's Gate. There was not a lot to choose from. So basically, these are the franchises he and Larian overall were considering. And of course, they landed on Baldur's Gate 3, and we ended up with this masterpiece. So while you probably have seen a bunch of posts claiming that Larian said they want to work on Fallout, that's not exactly what was said here. Larian wanted to work on Fallout, but they ended up working on Baldur's Gate 3 instead. And nothing about this recent interview or article suggests that they're still interested in working on Fallout, although it definitely doesn't mean that can't happen. Larian's in a really interesting place right now. Baldur's Gate 3 was a massive hit, many considering it one of the greatest video games of this generation or even of all time. But Larian has made it clear that they're moving on from Baldur's Gate 3 and really Baldur's Gate overall. They're not working on another Baldur's Gate game, and they're not even working on an expansion for Baldur's Gate 3. They have 2 projects currently underway, and one of them is described as their best work ever. Many are speculating at least one of these is Divinity Original Sin 3, but a new Fallout game certainly could be in the cards as many fans are hoping it is. And from some perspective, sure, this makes sense. Larian seems like one of the few developers out there that could get a large-scale interest in a new top-down Fallout game, returning to the roots of Fallout RPGs after all these years. But let's also not forget that Microsoft and Bethesda literally stole the Baldur's Gate 3 release date for Starfield. Last summer, Larian at the last minute had to move up the Baldur's Gate 3 release date because they didn't want to compete with Starfield. And even after that, they delayed the Xbox Series S release for several months, and that became a huge talking point as well. And in several interviews, Larian has credited their independent status as a major asset in what went right for Baldur's Gate 3 development. So they likely don't want the baggage that comes with Fallout, and maybe don't even want to work with Microsoft at all at this point. I certainly would understand that. But around the other corner, Obsidian has been very vocal about wanting to work on Fallout, and they're literally owned by Microsoft. Many fans are hoping that this match could be made, but even things on this front are starting to seem like a pipe dream. Between the recent news that Microsoft wants a Fallout game out sooner and Obsidian releasing Avowed later this year, it really seemed like this could work quite well. Avowed would be wrapping up production right around the same time that Microsoft is looking for a new team to work on Fallout. And we've heard how this has been discussed a couple of times over the years. The studio head at Obsidian mentioned wanting to work on another Fallout game before they retire, and even insider Jeff Grubb mentioned a few years ago how conversations were starting at Microsoft about Obsidian and Fallout, and even Fallout New Vegas too. But that was all thrown out earlier this year, and we hear from another insider, Lex Luddy, on a podcast with Jeff Grubb about how that probably isn't happening.
The discussion you brought up years ago now almost, Obsidian were approached about Fallout New Vegas 2, that did happen. I also know that it wasn't just Bethesda being like, hey, we don't want someone else making this game. It was also partly Obsidian going, hey, that would be a huge scale for us that we have backed away from. So I think there were a lot of people that were very BGS focused of BGS don't want someone else making
it was never
game.
Only that.
But also there is a part of other companies don't super want to make Fallout games within Microsoft because they have free reign to make their own projects. And why would you work with a partner that we know BGS is quite controlling of Fallout because they're telling the TV showrunners what they can and can't do in their show to a certain extent with the plot. Microsoft are looking for people to make another Fallout game. They wanted another Fallout game. They are annoyed that there was not a Fallout game ready to go. There is currently no Fallout in development.
No way.
Yeah, I can say that more or less as a fact. It is very unlikely that Obsidian are going to be the people to make the next Fallout.
And Obsidian being uncomfortable with the scale of this potential Fallout game actually does make a lot of sense and lines up with what they're doing with Avowed. We recently heard how Avowed began as Obsidian's take on Skyrim, but over time the game was significantly scaled back to be more in line with the scale of the Outer Worlds. That being a scale that Obsidian is just more comfortable with. And Lex goes on to mention how several studios at Microsoft are having this exact issue, where Microsoft is coming calling about Fallout work, but not many studios want that work, because now you have to forfeit some creative control over to Bethesda, and just generally, you don't get to work on your own thing. You're basically borrowing somebody else's IP for a limited time. And as we hear from that recent podcast, at least as of a couple of months ago, nobody at Microsoft was working on Fallout right now. That of course outside of 011 and Bethesda Game Studios Austin. So from the outside looking in, it very much so seems like Fallout has a problem right now. Microsoft actively wants a Fallout game out sooner, but it certainly sounds like they're having a hard time finding a good developer to work on it outside of Bethesda Game Studios. And of course, when it comes to Bethesda, they're quite preoccupied with the Elder Scrolls 6 and even Starfield. Although at the same time, there definitely has been some internal expansion at Bethesda around Fallout 76. 2024 will be one of the most content-rich years for Fallout 76 ever. It's already received 2 large-scale updates, and even that would make it one of the busier years for this game. But just recently, testing began on the next update coming later in 2024. Right now, Fallout 76 is being worked on by both Bethesda Game Studios Austin and 011. And I wouldn't be shocked if we see content ramp up even further, as now the Fallout TV show Boost almost looks to have permanently increased the Fallout 76 player count. It definitely seems like for a lot of people, Fallout 76 just had its coming out party after the Fallout TV show. Lots of fans giving this game an honest try for the first time since launch, and based off these recent player numbers, I can't imagine we're going to be dropping all the way back down to where we were earlier this year before the TV show. There's also that Fallout 3 remaster to pop up on this roadmap from last year. The roadmap leaked last year, but was actually made in 2020. Honestly, I would venture a guess that this is being done by an external studio, just like that Oblivion remaster, so it's likely just contract work and not really being done by internals at Microsoft itself. Although if you are curious about a Fallout 3 remake, get subscribed because I do have a video on that coming shortly. And in the past, Todd Howard made it clear that while Fallout 5 is on the horizon, it may not actually be the next game Bethesda works on after The Elder Scrolls 6. That quote is from before the recent TV show boost as well, so I definitely think Microsoft will be pressuring things a bit more heavily in that department, or at least until a secondary Fallout dev is located. I just can't imagine Microsoft will be super happy about Bethesda wrapping up The Elder Scrolls 6 and then not immediately working on Fallout 5. And some recent leaks make it seem like work on The Elder Scrolls 6 is seriously ramping up right now. This leak is honestly a bit of a silly one, but at the same time very legit looking in its own odd way. As one Redditor found, a Bethesda Game Studios employee's Pinterest page. Initially, this was mostly space images, but over time this transitioned into desert theme until more recently this has completely taken over. So right at the bat, we could see this transition from working on Starfield to actively working on The Elder Scrolls 6, but far more telling is the theme of all of this. It definitely seems like this is going to be a game set in Hammerfell. This aesthetic can't really be mistaken for many other locations in Elder Scrolls lore, and after this Reddit post was made and some attention was brought to all of this, that Pinterest account was privated, which just makes this entire thing seem far more plausible and basically confirms Hammerfell, at least for me. This also really makes me think that the next Elder Scrolls game could be coming in 2026. We had one lawyer mention that during the FTC trial, although technically they said the Elder Scrolls 16, but this just makes sense. It would be the right time for the next-gen console, so this could end up being a launch title, but the Elder Scrolls 6 coming out in 2026 would also mean that Fallout 5 may begin development a lot sooner than many of us were thinking. Although that isn't the only big news coming out around Fallout right now. We also just heard how Fallout London, the new game-sized experience that will take us to post-apocalyptic London, is almost ready for release. Fallout London found itself in a bit of an odd spot. The mod was delayed due to the next-gen update, but then they and everyone else discovered that, oh no, the next-gen update just broke Fallout 4. Use certain mods that edit NPCs and your game will begin to stutter. This is an extreme example, but yeah, you could just casually be playing Fallout 4 and dealing with these stutters at a fairly regular basis. I imagine you don't want to play Fallout London with a bunch of stutters going on all the time, so then Fallout London had to call an audible. Instead of updating for the next-gen version, they had to go back to working on it for the old gen of the game, and now it'll include a downgrader so it'll work on that version of Fallout 4. But the most recent update is that the quality assurance testing by GOG was completed, meaning that Fallout London is primed for release, and they're just waiting on the go-ahead from the actual Fallout London team now, which to me likely means that this mod is weeks away instead of months away, and I could very much so see this leading to a total resurgence of interest in Fallout 4 once again. Fallout London is really looking like it'll be almost like a new Fallout game coming out for a lot of fans out there. But yeah, unfortunately, Fallout 4 is still broken, and even as of right now, we don't really know when or even if Bethesda will address some of these lingering issues. I've covered these in several videos now, but I'm going to just continue talking about these until they're fixed, as many players are now having a worse experience compared to what they were doing several months ago. And in general, the modding situation on consoles is just very unfortunate right now. There's a lot of problems. Although we've also been getting some updates around the Fallout TV show as things are really starting to pick up around Season 2. Fallout was just recently nominated for 17 Emmys, and a variety of interviews came out around this news. As a part of this, Amazon clarified that Fallout Season 2 will not be an anthology. The same cast and story will be continued into Season 2, which, yeah, I think most of us realize that just based off what happened and how Season 1 ended, but at the same time, based off the sheer number of articles, I guess some users didn't get that. But far more relevant is the continuing news that Fallout Season 2 is coming out sooner than most of you probably think. We've heard from several interviews now how they are full steam ahead on Season 2, likely because of how big of a hit Season 1 was. And there are large factors enabling this. Season 2 is moving filming to California, which is literally where the Fallout TV show is set, so filming will just be easier. Several ideas were mapped out for Season 1, but then scrapped, never used in Season 1, but now with Season 2, they can immediately jump back into those partially complete ideas, so some work is already done. And of course, many of the Season 1 sets can just be reused for Season 2. But in this new Variety interview, we get to hear directly from some Amazon execs on how I think we're ahead of schedule in terms of being being able to get Season 2 back. We don't have an exact launch date yet, but we've already gotten scripts in hand, and I think fans of Season 1 will really love where we're going for Season 2. And the fact that they're saying they have scripts in hand already and are likely reviewing those makes me think Season 2 filming could begin in late 2024 or even early 2025, with Season 2 itself coming in 2025. Although honestly, all of this is giving me some pause. Season 2 of Fallout looks to be going towards New Vegas and really exploring the NCR and New Vegas lore. That is a very, very delicate area of Fallout lore to be marching towards. When you couple that with all these recent statements about them wanting to get Season 2 out as fast as possible, it just really makes me wary that mistakes will be made, and we'll be seeing quite a few more controversies around Season 2 of Fallout even compared to Season 1. Although personally, I'm super excited for Season 2, and if you want to learn more about what new things they're adding into that show, check out this video where I dive a bit deeper into all of that.